Not long ago, I did a video on the Suicide Squad, and I got criticised for being a DC fan. But the thing is, if I'm being honest, I'm more of a Marvel fan than a DC fan. And the fact that I've done more Marvel films than DC films, actually, that's something I've got to work on. But that's overall. Let's get on with this film. I'm Berryman, and this is 10 Things Wrong With. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is a 2021 American superhero film based on the Marvel Comics featuring the character Shang-Chi. In the film, Shang-Chi is forced to confront his past when his father, Wenwu, leader of the Ten Rings organization, draws Shang-Chi and his sister into a search for a mythical village. When the film was released, it set several box office records and received positive reviews from critics, many who praised the choreography of the action sequences. Literally everything about this film was praised. But because, as you all know, I am a nitpicker, what things have I found wrong with this film? Well, let me explain 10 things wrong with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Number 10, 10 Rings. Sorry, I've got to bring this one up first. So, the Mandarin uses 10 rings of power. These rings go on his hand, and they are of alien origin. Now, that part is in this film, and apparently it is going to get followed up later on in the MCU. We will see. But in this film, he does have rings. They're called Hungar rings, and normally they're made out of iron, and they're around his wrist, which makes it look like bracelets more than anything. But that's not how it is in the comics. The comics, they are stereotypical rings. Why couldn't the Mandarin have them, not the bracelet Hungar rings? I didn't like it at all. It's just wrong. Number 9, Mandarin. Technically, this is the third time we've seen the Mandarin. I mean, we saw 2 versions of the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. Now, they both got dismissed quite quickly. I mean, Ben Kingsley was really hyped up as the Mandarin until he turned out to be Trevor. That being aside, one of the hopes for this film was the fact that the Mandarin was going to get a proper comic book accurate version, and we didn't. He's someone completely different, and the people from Iron Man 3 just asked them if they could use the name of their organisation and create their own leader, which they named after an orange. No! That's not who the Mandarin is. Come on, when the MCU started, it was so comic accurate. Now they're like just nitpicking and saying, right, we're going to use this and make it into what we want. No, this is what's going to be the undoing of the MCU if they carry it on like this. They need to keep to the characters that they were created in the comics to the big screen. Keep changing it, people are going to start switching off. Number 8, Nascar. Berryman, what are you talking about Nascar in this film? Because facts, people, they got Nascar facts wrong. Now, granted, I am English. We don't have Nascar as such over here, but of course I'm going to reference in and research. Casey says that Jeff Gordon is the best NASCAR with the most wins in NASCAR of all time. No, he's not. Actually, he's not even second, he's actually third. David Pearson is actually second with 104 wins, and Richard Pretty is first with 200 NASCAR wins. Get your facts right. People like me who are nitpicking a-holes will look into stuff like this. Number 7, brakes. One of the first action sequences we get is a fight on a bus, and it's brilliant action sequences full of mistakes, and mistakes that people like me will find. Now, this one isn't actually just the film's fault, it's a Hollywood general trope that they get wrong. But on a bus, if you cut the brakes still sort of work until they stop working where they will lock up as a safety measure. The brakes are actually working reverse. It's air pressure, so the air pressure keeps the brakes off. When you put your foot down on the brake pedal, it takes the pressure off to make the brake pads work. That's how it works. So if you cut that pressure line, there's no pressure to take the brake pads off, they will lock into place. It was just wrong. And this is a Hollywood thing, not just this film thing. Films do this all the time, but it's just an error, full stop. Number 6, bus driver. Yeah, that wasn't the only thing wrong with that bus thing. I mean, a part of me actually thought that the sign on the bus was wrong, but I've actually Googled it. The #1 California, which is the state, is actually correct. Who knew? But the bus driver, on the other hand, yeah, he was wrong. So early on, he gets knocked out. Katie goes and drives the bus. So you would expect the bus driver to be on the floor the rest of the fight. No, he's actually sat up quite well, watching the fight. Seriously? Why did you not try and help the obviously young girl who's driving like a lunatic to try and stop the bus? He would know what to do a lot better than what she would do. Really? Number 5, falling bodies. Let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit... Ooh, I didn't realise I was recording. Anyway, moving on. So, another one of the brilliant action set pieces, and yeah, most of the action set pieces are brilliant in this film, but one of them's on the side of a high-rise building fighting on scaffolding. Now, some of the bad guys get knocked off. They're bad guys, who cares? Now, what the issue is obviously these bodies are going to land on the floor. Now, later on in the fight, when the camera's above them looking down, apart from the fact there's no body, nobody's stopping. Seriously, if bodies are falling from the sky, landing on the floor, people will come and see what's going on. There'll be traffic stopped, but the traffic's going past as normal, people walking past as normal. Or is it a case of nobody cares when bodies fall out of the sky? It's a good song that I sung at the beginning though. Number 4, Wetness. So Shang-Chi, towards the end of the film, Shang-Chi near enough drowns. He goes into the water until he is rescued by a dragon. Then the great protector dragon comes out of the water and Shang-Chi's bone dry. Seriously, he is bone dry. No. He would have been soaking wet. He'd been underwater for ages. Now, granted, the clothes may be waterproof, but his hair would still be wet. There'd still be water on his face, but no, he's bone dry. Not a drop on him, at all. Number 3, light show. Oh, we're having a fantastical adventure. The final fight needs to be a light show with many colours as much as we can, and it's getting boring. Seriously, Harry Potter, any of the Star Wars films, it's like energy beams hitting each other that are different colours. It's like the whole energy beam going into the sky thing that's coming quite common. Think of something new. I mean, the rest of the fight was brilliant. The light show part of it, yeah, I got fed up with that. Why? Number 2, saving the world again. This is starting to become a regular feature on my videos. The MCU has to save the world each and every time. Why can't we have it a bit low-key, like they did in the first Spider-Man, like they did in the first Iron Man film? But no, once again, there's going to be a dragon that's going to devour every single soul on the planet. It's getting boring. It was going okay until that part of it. Why? Actually, this film should have been just Shang-Chi versus Mandarin. That would have been good, but adding a dragon that's going to destroy the world? It's getting boring, Marvel. Number 1, where's the Hulk? I know this is going to get answered in the She-Hulk TV series, which isn't out yet, but Bruce Banner was back as Bruce Banner, not Professor Hulk, like we last saw him in Endgame. His arm is still in a sling after what happened in Endgame, but what happened to the Hulk? Now, I know that's going to get answered in the She-Hulk, but that's not out yet. And that's one question I didn't want answering. Why can we still have Professor Hulk and then they explain it later on? But no, I didn't like the fact that they've already turned him back to Bruce Banner. That was just wrong. Final thoughts. Let's face the facts here. On paper, this film should fail. Let me explain. Every time Hollywood tries to make a film of Asian descent, look at Dragon Ball, look at anything like that, it fails, it flops. They never get it right. Now, Marvel have taken a sensible step of actually getting an Asian cast and an Asian crew, and it's worked. It's really worked. You get all the stuff that's good about Asian films in a Hollywood setting. great. You have that mysticism, you have that cheekiness, that comedy, and you have some of the best fight sequences I have ever seen in an MCU film. It was brilliant, and it shouldn't have. It has no right to be as good as what it is. Now, what lets this film down, because yes, there are some things that let this film down, is it still follows that Marvel formula. And that is probably the only biggest flaw of this film. The direction was great, the CGI, the special effects were absolutely fantastic, and the story was actually engaging and moving and great. Now, as much as I don't like the fact that I don't like this version of the Mandarin, they actually do him justice. I actually felt for him. I understood his motives, and I understood why he was doing what he wanted. I probably would be on his side. I probably would do the same if anything happened to my partner. It was great, and I bought into that. I did like the final fight between those two, and I did like the fact that they turned, and I loved the fact that he chose to give his rings to his son. It was brilliant, it was moving. The other thing I did like about this film, which I don't think any other reviewers actually said, is it does have a bit of a Final Fantasy vibe to it. It is a very stereotypical Final Fantasy script on the big screen, and it works, especially when it comes down to the final boss. Now, let me explain. Literally a couple of people who are nobodies travel the world, get more people, learn about this world-ending threat, they go and fight and win the final battle. But on the final battle, it's literally boss fight after boss fight after boss fight, which happens on every single Final Fantasy game. And that is what happens here. Obviously, Shang-Chi and the Mandarin release the actual overall bad guy. He's winning, they beat him. He comes back from the dead, they beat him again. 3 times they took him down and he kept coming back. And I actually enjoyed that. It's very Final Fantasy, and especially as someone who loves Final Fantasy as much as I do, I got behind it. So yeah, this is also not only a comic book film, this is a video game film. This is probably the best live action version of Final Fantasy you are ever going to get. And I love that. The score was brilliant. They actually did some justice to Trevor. They brought back some of his comedy talents, but they made him just a normal guy off the drugs. I bought that. I actually enjoyed that. There was subtle references to the rest of the MCU, nothing major, just these subtle ones. Same again, it worked. So yes, 10 out of 10, the acting, the chemistry between the actors was absolutely fantastic. I mean, apparently the chemistry from the actors to behind the scenes, that went really well, because one of the cast members married the action sequence director. Great. So what am I going to rank it? As much as this is good, I can't give it a 10 out of 10 because there are so many comic inaccuracies and niggly little bits that I don't like. But I am going to give it a high score this week, and I am going to give it a 9 out of 10 berries. But that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Now, we finished this film, let's move on to next week's film, where, I'll tell you what, we'll do another action film, where we're going to actually promote femininity. Want to know what I'm on about? Well, come back next week and find out. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.